Commander Celine Tran stood at the edge of the crime scene, her eyes scanning the chaos left in the wake of her brother's death. The Galactic Peace Summit, once a beacon of cooperation, now served as the backdrop for a murder that shook the foundations of the interstellar community. "Commander Tran," a voice called out. Celine turned to find Inspector Rowe, a Martian detective known for his blunt methods and sharp intellect. "We need to talk about your brother, Jace." Celine nodded, her expression unreadable. "Let's cut to the chase, Inspector. Who would want my brother dead?" Rowe handed her a datapad filled with various communications and reports. "Your brother was working on sensitive negotiations, trying to mediate between conflicting alien factions. It seems he stepped on more than a few toes." Celine flicked through the datapad, her eyes narrowing as she absorbed the information. "This is more than political rivalry. This smells of a cover-up." As they spoke, a small figure darted between the shadows, unnoticed by everyone but Celine. She motioned to Rowe, who subtly followed her gaze. Together, they approached the figure who turned out to be a young boy, no older than 10, his skin shimmering with a subtle iridescence typical of the Aran species. "Who are you?" Celine asked gently. "I'm Kai," the boy whispered, his voice tinged with fear. "I saw what happened. I saw who came near your brother." Celine exchanged a look with Rowe. "Kai, can you tell us what you saw?" Kai nodded slowly, his eyes wide. "I can do more than tell. I can show you." Intrigued, Celine watched as Kai closed his eyes and focused. A shimmering image appeared in the air before them, a holographic playback of the moments leading up to Jace's death. The image was grainy, but one could make out a group of figures, cloaked and masked, converging on Jace. "This kid's a psychic projector," Rowe muttered. "This changes everything." Celine kept her eyes on the images, her mind racing. "Kai, where did you get this ability?" Kai looked down, scared. "It's why they want me. My people, they use us as tools." Understanding dawned on Celine. Jace had been protecting Kai, and his murder was an attempt to silence him and capture the boy. She made a decision in that moment. "Kai, you're under my protection now. We're going to find out who did this, and we'll stop them. No one else will use you," Celine promised, a fierce determination in her voice. Over the next days, Celine and Rowe, with Kai's assistance, delved deeper into the conspiracy. Kai's abilities allowed them to intercept and decode secret communications between the conspirators. Each message they uncovered pointed to a deep-seated corruption involving multiple species within the Federation, all fearful of losing power. As they uncovered more evidence, the danger to them escalated. Attempts were made on their lives, and it became clear that their investigation was stirring up forces that had long been hidden within the shadows of the Federation. Despite the threats, Celine pushed forward, driven by the memory of her brother and the desire to protect Kai from those who wished to exploit him. The closer they got to the truth, the more perilous their journey became. Finally, they traced the conspiracy to a high-ranking official in the Federation, someone who had always been seen as a staunch advocate for peace. Confronting him within his office, where he was surrounded by his loyal guards, Celine laid out the evidence they had gathered. "You killed my brother because he was going to expose the exploitation of innocents like Kai. You've been manipulating the Federation for your gain," Celine accused, her voice cold with fury. The official laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Commander Tran, you are in over your head. Did you really think you could expose me with no consequences?" "It's not just me you have to worry about," Celine retorted. As she spoke, the walls of the office flickered as Kai projected their conversation live across the galaxy, revealing the official's true nature to all. The official's face paled as he realized the extent of their planning. Guards hesitated, looking between each other and their now disgraced leader. Rowe stepped forward, placing the official under arrest. "It's over. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, among other charges." As the official was led away, Celine turned to Kai, who looked up at her with a new sense of hope. "You did well, kid. Thanks to you, we're going to make sure this never happens again." The story of their investigation spread throughout the galaxy, igniting calls for reform and transparency within the Federation. Earth, once seen as a minor player, was now at the forefront of a movement to redefine galactic politics. Celine, Kai by her side, watched as the Federation began the long process of healing and reform. "We did it, Jace," she whispered to the stars. "We finally did it." Commander Celine Tran meticulously examined the decoded messages alongside Inspector Rowe. They sat in a dimly lit room, screens casting an eerie glow as they pieced together the tangled web of galactic intrigue. Each message revealed another layer of the conspiracy, painting a picture of deep corruption that had festered unseen. "Look at this, Celine," Rowe pointed at a particularly incriminating message. "It implicates a council member in the cover-up of illegal mining operations on Zeta 4. They used forced labor, aliens like Kai." Celine's eyes darkened with anger. "They're using their positions for profit, risking lives for resources. It's monstrous." Rowe nodded, his face set in grim lines. "And here's more. They planned to eliminate anyone who stood in their way. Jace was just one of many targets." As they delved deeper, Kai sat quietly in the corner, his small figure almost swallowed by the shadows. Despite his young age, he understood the gravity of their work. He had seen too much sorrow in his short life, his abilities exploited by those who saw him as nothing more than a tool. Celine looked over at Kai, her resolve hardening. "We need more proof, something undeniable that we can take to the Galactic Council. Kai, can you try to project the council members' last meeting? We need to see if they discussed Jace." Kai nodded silently and closed his eyes, concentrating. The air in front of them shimmered, and soon, a holographic image formed. They watched as the council member spoke, unaware of the psychic child who would bring his downfall. "We must ensure our operations on Zeta 4 continue without interference," the council member said in the projection. "As for the diplomat, his death should serve as a warning to any who oppose us." Celine recorded the projection, her hands steady despite the rage boiling inside her. "That's it. That's what we needed." With the evidence secured, Celine and Rowe prepared to confront the council member. They knew the risks. The council member had powerful allies who wouldn't hesitate to protect him. But the truth was on their side, and they were not alone in their fight. As they approached the council chambers, Rowe glanced at Celine. "Are you sure about this? It's not too late to turn back." Celine's jaw clenched. "No turning back. It's time everyone saw the true face of their leaders." Inside the council chambers, the meeting was in full swing, with delegates from various planets debating trade agreements and mining rights. Celine and Rowe entered unannounced, the evidence in hand, their presence sending a ripple of surprise and murmurs through the room. The council member spotted them and paled, his confident demeanor faltering. "Commander Tran, this is highly irregular. What is the meaning of this interruption?" Celine wasted no time. "This council has been corrupted by one of its own," she declared, her voice ringing clear and authoritative. She connected her datapad to the chamber's main screen, and the recording of the council members' meeting played for all to see. The room erupted in chaos as delegates reacted to the evidence of treachery among them. The council member stood, sputtering denials, but the proof was irrefutable. "You have betrayed the principles of this federation," Celine continued, her eyes locked on the council member. "You exploited vulnerable species, murdered to cover your tracks, and endangered the stability of our galaxy." Security guards approached, hesitating as they looked to the head of the council for direction. The head of the council, an aged alien with a reputation for fairness, nodded solemnly. "Take him into custody. We will have order, and we will have justice," the head declared. As the council member was escorted out, murmurs of approval and shock echoed through the chambers. Celine and Rowe's gamble had paid off. The Federation was shaken, but it was a necessary upheaval to begin the process of healing and change. After the session, delegates approached Celine, thanking her for her bravery. Among them was a representative from Kai's planet, who had watched the proceedings with growing hope. "Commander Tran, your actions today have restored my faith in this Federation. How can we assist in the reforms? Celine smiled, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. Work with us to ensure that no one, no matter how powerful, can abuse their position again. Help us build a system that protects all species, especially the most vulnerable. As the chamber began to clear, Celine felt a small hand slip into hers. Kai looked up at her, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration. You did it, Celine, he said quietly. Celine knelt down to his level, her expression softening. We did it, Kai. And we're just getting started. Together, they walked out of the council chambers, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that the fight for justice was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, there was hope. Celine and Ro stood in the central operations room, surrounded by holoscreens displaying various star systems and their political alignments. They were preparing for what could be the final act in their investigation, the connection of disparate threads into a conclusive narrative that would expose the depth of the corruption. Everything leads to this point, Ro, Celine stated, her voice filled with determination. We've uncovered enough to start a storm, but without the core, without proving who orchestrated my brother's murder and why, it'll be just another conspiracy theory. Ro nodded, his eyes scanning the data. We need a breakthrough, something that ties the council member to the larger conspiracy. There's a pattern here we're not seeing. As they pondered their next move, Kai approached them, a hesitant expression on his face. I think I can help, he offered quietly. There's a place, in my visions, a hub of sorts, where these decisions are made. I can try to take us there, see more. Encouraged by Kai's bravery, Celine arranged for a small, covert team to accompany them to the location Kai had envisioned, a secluded outpost on the edge of Federation space, rumored to be a meeting place for the galaxy's most influential figures. Upon arrival, the desolate and unassuming nature of the outpost belied its significance. Inside, Kai focused, tapping deeper into his psychic abilities than ever before. His face contorted with concentration as images and voices began to fill the room, phantasmal echoes of meetings that had shaped the fate of entire planets. There, Kai gasped, pointing to a flickering image of a group of high-ranking officials, including the arrested council member. They meet here, decide everything here. The team recorded everything, capturing not just the images but also the audio, a damning litany of crimes, from bribery and coercion to outright genocide for profit. As the evidence mounted, Celine knew this was the smoking gun they needed. But capturing it was only half the battle. Now, they had to get it out into the open. Let's move, team. We have what we need and we know too much. They will come after us, Celine directed with urgency. The team quickly retreated to their ship, dodging security patrols that had been alerted to their unauthorized presence. Back on Earth, Celine and Ro prepared to present their findings to the Galactic Council, a risky endeavor given the reach of those they were about to expose. The evidence was compiled, a clear thread painted from the outpost back to the murder of Jace and beyond, implicating some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The council chamber was filled to capacity as Celine began her presentation, her voice steady but powerful. Members of the council, we stand at a crossroads, she started, projecting the images and audio they had captured. What you see and hear is the reality of our Federation, the manipulation and exploitation by those entrusted to protect us. The reactions ranged from disbelief to horror as the evidence of the deep-rooted corruption was laid bare. Murmurs filled the air, growing louder with each new revelation. As Celine concluded, the head of the council, an old and wise being who had watched the Federation grow from its infancy, stood. His voice boomed across the chamber. This council owes Commander Tran and her team a debt of gratitude. We have been blind to the rot within, but no longer. It is time for a cleansing fire. The aftermath was immediate and intense. Arrests were made, positions dismantled, and new laws proposed to prevent such abuses of power. The Federation would be remade, this time with safeguards to protect the integrity of its governance. Celine, once an outsider in her own community, was now hailed as a hero, her name synonymous with truth and justice. Kai, too, was celebrated, not as a tool but as a brave individual who had stood against the darkness. As they stood outside the council chamber, watching the flurry of activity, Ro turned to Celine. "You've done it, Celine. You've changed the galaxy." Celine looked at Kai, who was watching the stars above with a hopeful gaze. "We've done it, Ro. But the real work starts now. We have to rebuild, ensure this never happens again." Kai squeezed her hand, a smile breaking through his usual somber demeanor. "With you here, I believe we can do just that." The story of their fight for justice spread far and wide, a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of courage and determination. Earth had indeed taken the galaxy by storm, not through conquest, but through the relentless pursuit of justice, setting a new standard for all the worlds to follow. Celine felt the weight of the galaxy's eyes on her as she prepared to make her most crucial move yet. With the conclusive evidence in hand, she and Ro now faced the daunting task of publicly exposing the highest echelons of the Galactic Council involved in the conspiracy. The assembly hall was charged with a tense anticipation. Members of various species gathered, representing a microcosm of the Federation's diversity. "Are you ready?" Ro whispered as they approached the podium. His voice was steady, but Celine could see the tightness in his expression. "As ready as we'll ever be," Celine replied, her gaze fixed on the council members arrayed before her. The buzz of conversation died down as she stepped up to the microphone, the silence a stark contrast to the storm she was about to unleash. "Members of the Galactic Council, esteemed delegates," Celine began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Today, we reveal a betrayal so profound that it has shaken the very foundation of our Federation. A betrayal that cost my brother his life and nearly cost us our collective future." She paused, allowing her words to sink in, her eyes scanning the room, meeting the stares of hundreds of delegates. She then nodded to Ro, who began the projection, a vivid array of images and intercepted communications that they had painstakingly gathered. The room filled with the voices of the conspirators, their plans, and plots laid bare for all to hear. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire as each revelation added weight to the undeniable truth of corruption and greed that had infiltrated the highest levels of governance. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a holographic recording of a secret meeting discussing the strategic elimination of any threats to their power, Jace's name mentioned explicitly as a target. Celine watched the faces of the council members, noting who looked guilty, who looked shocked, and who tried to maintain an impassive facade. "As you can all see, the evidence is irrefutable," Celine continued, her voice firm and demanding attention. "These individuals have not only committed crimes against their own people but against all species of the Federation. They have undermined the principles upon which our union was built." A high-ranking official, a tall, thin creature with scales that shimmered in the artificial light, stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is an outrage," he bellowed. "You dare accuse your superiors of such heinous acts based on mere recordings?" Celine met his gaze squarely. "Not accusations, facts. Facts supported by evidence, by your own words and actions, captured and preserved for all to judge." Rose stepped forward, adding, "We have more than just recordings. We have financial records, witness testimonies, and psychometric projections all pointing to the same conclusion. The conspiracy is real, and it is extensive." The chamber erupted into chaos, some delegates shouting for order, others clamoring for immediate justice. Through it all, Celine remained calm, a beacon of resolve amid the storm. The head of the council, an elderly figure revered for her wisdom, finally called for silence. "Enough," she decreed, her voice amplified to cut through the noise. "We will have order. Commander Tran has presented her case. It is now up to us to act upon it. We must uphold the law, no matter how high the guilty may stand." The council agreed to a recess, a period of deliberation where each piece of evidence would be reviewed, and the implicated members would be given a chance to defend themselves. It was a procedural necessity, but Celine knew the battle was already won. As the delegates filed out, Celine and Ro found themselves momentarily alone in the chamber, the weight of what they had just done settling around them. "We did it, Celine." "You did it," Ro said, his voice tinged with awe and relief. Celine nodded, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "We did it together." But it's not over yet. The real work begins now, rebuilding trust, restructuring power. You think they'll go quietly? Ro asked, a hint of concern in his voice. They'll have to, Celine responded, her tone leaving no room for doubt. The evidence is too compelling, and the galaxy is watching. They'll face justice, and we'll make sure of it. As they left the chamber, stepping back into the light of the public areas, they were met with a mixture of applause and stares. Word had spread quickly, and the impact of their revelations was already taking hold. Change was imminent, and though the path forward would be fraught with challenges, Celine knew they had taken the first critical step toward a more just federation. Kai, who had been waiting outside, ran up to Celine, his expression one of mixed fear and admiration. Is it over? He asked, looking up at her with wide eyes. Celine ruffled his hair, a smile breaking through her solemn demeanor. For today, yes. But tomorrow, we build a better future, one where no one has to fear the truth. Together, they walked out, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, armed with the truth and the collective hope of a galaxy yearning for integrity and justice. The battle was won, but the war for the soul of the Federation was just beginning. The tension in the air was palpable as the Galactic Council reconvened to deliver its final decision. Celine Tran stood at the center of the room, her uniform sharp and pristine, a stark contrast to the chaos her revelations had unleashed. Around her, hundreds of delegates whispered in a dozen different languages, their voices creating an undercurrent of anxiety. Celine's gaze remained fixed on the head of the council, a figure whose wisdom and fairness were now tested against the storm of corruption that had been exposed. Commander Tran, the council head began, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of the moment. You have brought to light evidence that shakes the very foundations of our Federation. The crimes committed by those entrusted to lead us are undeniable, as are the consequences of their actions. Celine felt the weight of the room shift toward her, the collective gaze of the galaxy's most powerful beings focused on her next move. She took a deep breath, her voice calm but firm. This isn't just about my brother, though his life was taken in the pursuit of truth. This is about every life exploited, every voice silenced, every innocent being who suffered under the shadow of greed and corruption. It's time we prove that the Federation stands for justice, not power. The head of the council nodded solemnly. Your words resonate deeply, Commander. As of this moment, the implicated members of the council are stripped of their positions and placed under immediate arrest. A special tribunal will oversee their trials, ensuring transparency and fairness. Gasps echoed through the chamber as security forces moved swiftly to detain those implicated. The disgraced council members protested loudly, their cries of innocence drowned by the murmurs of approval from the remaining delegates. Celine's heart pounded as she watched the scene unfold. Justice was beginning to take root, but she knew this was only the first step. The council head continued, her voice rising above the noise. Furthermore, this body will enact sweeping reforms to ensure such abuses of power can never occur again. Transparency and accountability will become the cornerstones of our governance. To oversee these reforms, we request Commander Tran's continued service as a special advisor to this council. The room erupted in applause, delegates rising to their feet in a show of support. Celine stood motionless, the weight of the offer pressing down on her. She hadn't sought glory or recognition, her mission had always been justice. Yet, here she was, the face of change for an entire galaxy. Ro leaned in, his voice low but warm. Looks like you've got a new job, Commander. Celine smiled faintly, her resolve shining through. Only if it means we can make a real difference. As the applause subsided, Kai stepped forward, clutching a small holographic projector. His usually timid demeanor was replaced by a quiet determination. I have something to say, he announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. The delegates turned their attention to him, intrigued by the child who had played a pivotal role in exposing the conspiracy. Kai activated the projector, displaying an image of his homeworld, a planet scarred by years of exploitation. This is what happens when power is unchecked. My people were used, our abilities treated as tools instead of gifts. I don't want anyone else to suffer like we did. Please, make sure no one ever feels like they're just a thing to be used. The room fell silent, Kai's words resonating with a raw honesty that no amount of political rhetoric could match. Tears welled in Celine's eyes as she placed a hand on his shoulder. You're braver than most adults I know, Kai. Thank you. The council head spoke again, her voice soft yet resolute. Young one, your words are heard and will be remembered. Your courage has reminded us all of our responsibility to those we serve. As the session concluded, Celine and her team stepped out into the open air of the council plaza, greeted by a crowd of reporters, onlookers, and supporters. The sight was overwhelming, a sea of faces representing every corner of the galaxy. Some cheered, others waved banners, but all shared the same hope, that change was finally here. A reporter pushed forward, her microphone extended. Commander Tran, what's next for you after this groundbreaking victory? Celine paused, considering her answer carefully. What's next is the real work. Exposing corruption is one thing, but rebuilding trust and ensuring fairness requires all of us. This isn't my victory, it's a collective effort, and I hope we all rise to the challenge. As the crowd roared its approval, Celine felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since Jace's death. He would never see the justice his sacrifice had brought, but she knew he would be proud of what they had accomplished. She looked at Kai, who stood beside her, his small frame dwarfed by the towering beings around him, and saw a future worth fighting for. Ro clapped a hand on her shoulder. So, hero of the galaxy, ready to get started? Celine laughed, a sound that felt strange but welcome. One step at a time, Ro. One step at a time. As they walked away from the plaza, the sun setting on a day that would be remembered for generations, Celine knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. But for the first time, she felt the galaxy moving in the right direction, guided by truth, courage, and the unyielding belief in justice for all.